The rain had started again, a thin, persistent curtain of water falling from a low, grey sky. Thomas sat on a damp wooden board, his only dry space for the night. His heavy boots caked in mud, his socks, once wool, now stiff and cold against his skin. In his hands, a small, precious letter, softened by damp air. The ink slightly smudged, but the words made him smile. He read the sender's name, his sister. He read the last line twice. "We miss you." For a brief moment the mud seemed to recede, the distant noise seemed to recede, the biting cold seemed to recede. This quiet, solitary moment was the start of another day in the trench. A world utterly unlike home. A long, narrow ditch carved deep into the earth, high walls shored with timber and packed soil, sandbags stacked like bricks along the top, a parapet offering a sliver of protection, men pressed together for warmth, sleeping on boards or curled in small dugouts, the watch before dawn. Each day in the trench followed a list of relentless, repetitive tasks. Men moving along a narrow trench, tired with monotony. Water pooled, swirls of mud. After stand to, a man would stand down into inches of cold water. Thick, clinging mud, soaking boots. The first and most important job was to clean his rifle. He would meticulously strip it down, wiping each part with an oily rag, ensuring the bolt moved smoothly, inspecting the barrel was clear. Only then could he turn to the trench itself, always decaying, always needing repair. A party filled sandbags, the coarse Hessian scratching his hands as he shoveled heavy, wet earth. Others repaired the duckboards, replacing splintered planks, re-leveling sunken sections. There were always supplies to move, ammunition boxes, sacks of coal, crates of food, carried along narrow, winding passages from the rear. Standing guard on the fire step in shifts, vigilant eyes scanning for a glint of a sniper's scope or the slightest movement. At night, tense patrols crawled through mud and tangled wire. Food was simple, hardtack and bully beef, sometimes a hot stew, often cold and flecked with mud. Rain completely transformed life in the trenches, turning a difficult existence into a miserable one. The clay soil of Flanders became a thick, greedy mud that clung to everything. Men could sink up to their knees. Walking a few yards became a monumental struggle. In heavy downpours, trenches flooded, canals of foul water. Men perched on fire steps or boards to keep kit dry. Water's weight could collapse walls, burying men alive. When frost arrived, the ground froze solid, digging impossible, the surface treacherously slick. Wet clothes and boots made the cold bite hard, illness spread fast. The most dreaded affliction was trench foot, feet submerged in cold water until skin went numb, then red or blue, and in the worst cases rotted to gangrene and amputation. Orders: dry boots when possible, rub feet with whale oil or paraffin, often not enough. They shared the trenches with millions of rats, grotesquely large, fattened on scraps, and grimly, the fallen. Bayonets and bullets could not stem the swarms. Lice lived in every seam, an unbearable itch. Men singed seams with candles only to be reinfested. The smell was overpowering. Stagnant mud, unwashed bodies, chloride of lime, cordite, and the faint, sweet taint of decay. Fear was a constant, an underlying presence. A low hum that never truly went away. It could spike into terror in an instant with the scream of an incoming shell. Shells fell without warning, their approach a rising whistle that made every man freeze. The ground shook with deafening impact. A blast hurled earth, shrapnel, and splintered timber through the air. A direct hit could obliterate a trench. Even near misses collapsed walls and tore men apart. The sheer noise of a prolonged bombardment could drive men mad. Snipers dealt sudden, silent death. Raise your head a second too long and a single well-aimed bullet found you. Men learned periscopes and stooped movement. The pressure of being watched never lifted. The crack of a shot, the thud of a man falling, a sound that etched deep caution into everyone. Gas attacks began with a hiss, a green then yellow vapor drifting low across no man's land.
Cries of gas, gas, sent men scrambling for primitive masks, fumbling straps as seconds meant life or death. Gas, gas!
Early hoods were often ineffective. Gas burned eyes, throat, lungs, blindness, suffocation, excruciating pain. Yet even here, there were moments of calm and small sparks of normal life. Letters were a vital lifeline, a tangible connection to peace and love. They read and reread until paper wore thin. A new baby, a good harvest, gossip from home. Writing back reassured loved ones and helped them process what they endured. Newspapers, weeks old, linked them to the wider world. Small rituals built community, cards, jokes, songs about home, and darkly humorous parodies about the war. They shared what little they had, trading and pooling rations into something more palatable. A shared cigarette at dusk was fellowship, a peace understood without words. Camaraderie held them together, waking a friend on watch, carrying a wounded comrade. Parcels transformed a day, a bar of chocolate, warm knitted socks, a jar of jam, symbols of love. Some planted wildflowers in spent shells and trench ledges, fragile proof of the human spirit. The trenches were not a single line, but a complex, deep network. At the front were the positions closest to the enemy and in constant danger. Behind lay support trenches, then reserve lines where men found a little rest. Life was rotation. Days in the front, enduring shells and raids. Then relief back to safer lines. In the rear, work continued, but shelling lessened and hot meals and sleep were more likely. Occasionally came leave, a town, a meal at a table, a real bed with clean sheets, a street walked without fear, a vital release, proof that peace still existed. The journey back was hard, but the memory helped them hold on. Doctors and nurses worked in casualty stations and base hospitals, removing shrapnel, stitching wounds, fighting infection. Evacuation meant care, the kindness of a nurse, a clean bed, respite from noise and filth. Rotation kept the army fighting. Constant exposure would have broken men completely. When the war was over and the guns fell silent, the land itself bore the scars. Fields once green were a torn wasteland. Trees shattered, wires snaked across ground, lines that divided men. No man's land was haunted by attacks, and by those never brought home. The trenches were the story of ordinary men, farmers, clerks, factory workers, teachers, thrust into an extraordinary, terrible place. It is the story of how they woke, ate, worked, and feared, day after day. Not just of big battles, but of small kindnesses in the dark, the jokes that sparked laughter, and the camaraderie that helped them survive. Hope flickered like a small candle in a place of overwhelming mud and noise. Courage was often quiet, facing routine filth and fear, the stretcher-bearer under fire, the cheerful letter written in despair. Thomas folded the smudged letter and tucked it close to his heart. He picked up his rifle, its metal cold, and checked it was clean. He nodded to a friend, took a sip of cold, sweet tea, and turned his face up to the persistent rain. Another line in a long tally. He lived it with the others and kept going. That in itself was everything.